Hi everybody, and welcome to the presentation of our behavior change project. My name is Stacy, and I will be sharing our PowerPoint throughout the presentation. Our project consisted of replicating a study that used a token economy to increase walking behavior. The members of our group include Andrea, a behavior therapist and research assistant, and she will be presenting the supporting literature. Myself, I am an RBT, and I will be presenting the original study. Kyla is a teacher, and she will be presenting our methods. Jeremy is a quality autism services practitioner, and he will be presenting our results. Kaylin is an education coordinator and RBT, and she will be presenting our conclusions and limitations. First, we have Andrea, who will be presenting some background research on token economies.
All right. So the first study is from Peterson et al., 2008. The study looked at the overall physical ability of adults with an intellectual disability by measuring and monitoring their steps walked across weekdays, weekends, and all hours of the day. The researchers hypothesized that a majority of the sample would take fewer than 10,000 steps per day, and individuals with a mild ID and younger adults would be more active than those with a moderate ID and older adults. So for their methods, they used 131 adults with a mild to moderate ID, ages 18 to 60, who all received less than 10 hours of group living services a week and did not live with their families. So each participant wore a pedometer that collected walking and running data, and it collected timestamps as well. And the screen was covered so that participants wouldn't be biased by how many steps it said. The results for this study, the researchers found the mean steps per day for during the week ranged from 1,700 to 24,000. So there's a large variation across participants, and only 15.3% of participants reached the public health guideline of 10,000 steps per day. So those with a moderate ID had a lower step per day average than those with a mild ID, which is consistent with the researchers' hypothesis. So the next study is from Todd and Reed from 2006. This study examined the effects of using an intervention package of edible reinforcement, verbal cueing, and self-monitoring on snowshoeing and walking and jogging in 3 men with an autism diagnosis under DSM-4 criteria. So the methods for this study, the participants were 3 men ages 15 to 20 enrolled in a school in Canada for severe disabilities. All 3 participants were non-vocal and engaged in high rates of stereotypical behaviors. A changing criterion design was utilized. So there are 3 conditions: baseline, self-monitoring with verbal cueing and edibles, and self-monitoring with verbal cueing without edibles. The second of the 3 phases was the changing criterion, where edibles were systematically decreased from 4 per lap to 1. All participants completed the intervention at the same time and at the same rate. Participants were taught to use a self-monitoring board. They placed a happy face under their name each time they completed 1 lap by either walking or snowshoeing, depending on the activity that day. And preferred edibles were given in the second phase of the study and then systematically decreased. Teachers provided a list to the researchers of potential preferred edibles. And verbal cueing was provided throughout the study in the form of directions and encouragement. So results for this study, all participants increased in laps completed throughout the study. The activity changed from snowshoeing to walking during the middle of the second phase. And overall, the study showed that this intervention package was effective in increasing laps completed in participants with autism. So the third study It's from Bennett and colleagues from 1989. The study examined the use of token reinforcement on exercise rates and the health benefits that resulted. The study used 3 female participants with Down syndrome, ages 24 to 26, and they had IQs between 32 and 56. They used a multiple baseline across subjects design. During baseline, participants could voluntarily use a stationary bike. During intervention, participants used the bike each weekday for 15 minutes, and the intervention phase lasted 6 to 8 weeks. During this phase, the participants received tokens at a predetermined rate that could be traded in for reinforcers. And the results, the authors determined that the token reinforcement intervention was successful, and cardiovascular results from this study included a 12.2% decrease in resting heart rates and an 18% decrease in exercise heart rate. So overall, these studies show promising results, but more research that utilizes experimental control was needed to confirm and build upon the existing studies. And now Stacy is going to present on our original study and purpose.
The original study was conducted by Krentz, Miltenberger, and Valbuena in 2016, and it aimed to increase the distance walked for individuals with intellectual disabilities, or ID, by implementing a token economy. Participants included 5 men between the ages of 34 and 67, and the participants had mild to moderate ID and did not display any physical disabilities. The researcher used an AB-AB design to establish the effectiveness of the token economy. Treatment fidelity was calculated for 38% of the sessions. A researcher and an independent observer recorded the number of laps walked, and inter-observer agreement was calculated by dividing the smaller number of laps by the larger number of laps. During each baseline session, the researcher asked the participants, "Who wants to walk today?" Participants then followed the researcher walking, and the number of 50-meter laps walked for each participant was recorded. Participants were not offered any tokens or praise for walking. A preference assessment was also conducted for each participant during the baseline phase. The preference assessment identified tangibles or edibles that each participant preferred. During the intervention phase, participants were made aware of the token economy, and the same basic procedures were followed as in baseline. Specifically, researchers asked the participants who wants to walk today, and then the participants followed the researchers while the researchers recorded the number of laps for each participant. Participants were also given a bag to carry while walking. The participants received a token for each lap they walked, as well as social praise from the researchers. Tokens were exchanged at a rate that was determined based on each participant's baseline walking. Both the baseline and intervention phases were repeated to determine the effectiveness of the token economy in an AB-AB design. The results of the study showed an increase in walking for 4 of the 5 participants during the first intervention phase and a decrease in walking during the second baseline phase. The second intervention phase showed an increase in walking for all 5 participants. The results of the study indicate the effectiveness of the token economy to increase the walking of individuals with ID. All of this information is viewable on the graphs of the walking behavior that were taken from the study and placed into this PowerPoint. The purpose of our study was to replicate the methods of Krentz, Miltenberger, and Valbuena's 2016 study on token reinforcement. The researchers outlined the importance of increasing walking among individuals with ID for exercise as a purpose of their study. Just as it is important for individuals with ID to increase exercise, it is also important for other populations. Our study focused on the token economy as a method to increase distance walking to generalize to a different population, specifically college students. With that, the purpose of our study was to examine the effectiveness of a token economy on the distance walked to indicate validity of Krins, Miltenberger, and Valbuena's 2016 methods. Next, we have Kyla, who will be presenting the methods of our study.
The participants in our study consisted of 5 college students attending Ball State University. Kyla, a 30-year-old teacher, was mildly physically active, participating in a team sport at least once a week. Kaylin, a 27-year-old registered behavior technician, was moderately to very physically active, spending 4 to 8 hours in a gym each week. Stacy, a 24-year-old registered behavior technician, was mildly physically active, spending 1 to 2 hours per week walking outdoors. Andrea, a 21-year-old behavior therapist, was moderately physically active and spent 4 hours exercising per week. Jeremy, a 30-year-old quality autism services practitioner, was moderately physically active and spent 4 to 6 hours per week lifting weights. The setting for our study was conducted in each individual participant's neighborhood. They walked a route according to their own availability. The materials that each participant required included a personal smartphone with the following apps installed: the Map My Run app to record the total distance walked, the Tally Counter app to keep track of the total number of 50-meter laps each participant walked, and a clock with an alarm set asking if the participant wanted to walk that day. Individual reinforcers were identified from a preference assessment, and then paper clips were used as tokens to track overall laps walked. The different reinforcement choices by each participant included the following: Tootsie Rolls, Sprite, and fruit snacks for Kyla, ice cream, chocolate-covered pretzels, cherry Pepsi for Andrea, Pop-Tarts, Mountain Dew, rice cakes for Jeremy, coffee, Mexican food, cinnamon gum, and chocolate candy for Kaylin, popcorn, chocolate chips, and ice cream for Stacy. The behavioral definition used in our study was: 1 lap is defined as taking forward steps at a low to moderate pace, 1 to 3 miles per hour without stopping, except to tally frequency of laps, to complete necessary activities such as tying shoes or getting a drink of water, stopping for safety reasons such as at a crosswalk, or to discontinue the walking session. An example would include taking forward steps at a pace of 3 miles per hour on a treadmill, only stopping for 20 seconds to tie shoes. A non-example could be a participant taking steps forward but ceasing to walk for 10 minutes to talk on the phone midway through the lap. If participants stopped walking before the lap was completed, it was not scored. The design that we used in our study was an ABA reversal design. For data collection, the dependent measure was the number of 0.05 kilometer laps walked in an hour, or 50 meters. The Map My Run app tracked the total distance, while the Tally Counter app kept track of the laps while walking each session. Clips were placed in a bag to tally total number of laps, and each participant added their own data in a spreadsheet to track individual results. The phases of our study included 2 baseline phases and 2 intervention phases. In the baseline phase, the participants used a program alarm to ask, "Want to walk today?" Participants could choose to walk or not. If they chose to walk, they would then use the Map My Run app and the Tally Counter app to record, and they walked no more than an hour total. During the intervention phases, the same procedures were used as in baseline, except the alarm notification, which now read, "Want to walk today? You will earn tokens to trade for items." A token exchange rate was determined based on individual baseline levels. The average of the baseline was taken and multiplied by 5. If the baseline had an average of 0, then the exchange rate was 5 tokens by default. Participants shared maps with each other to check for inter-observer agreement. IOA was calculated by dividing the smaller number of laps by the larger number of laps and converting the results to a percentage. Treatment integrity was maintained by ensuring that all participants used the same phone apps. Individuals reviewed behavioral definitions frequently, and then data was tracked using a shared document. Andrea is now going to go into more depth in regards to treatment fidelity and inter-observer agreement.
All right, so more specifically with fidelity, we looked at the consistent use of the daily alarm, the consistent use of data added to our shared spreadsheet, Map My Run app utilized correctly, and the Tally Counter app utilized correctly. So here are the averages for all of the different fidelity items across participants, and then broken down by each week. So a daily alarm utilized every day was 100% across all participants and across all 4 weeks. Data added to the spreadsheet was 100% across all participants for all 4 weeks. Map My Run app utilized correctly was 100% for all participants in weeks 1, 3, and 4, and 94% for week 2. Using the counter app correctly was 100% for weeks 1 and 3, and 96% for week 2, and 95% for week 4. And the averages for any individual fidelity across all items was 80% to 100%, and that was the range. And now for IOA, we conducted IOA for 33% of our laps. We obtained a result of 100% for all IOA conducted using the total count IOA method. And here's one example of what we did. We would share the what our Map My Run app looked like. So on this day, I did 0.45 kilometers, and it says that it was June 23rd. So we would share that with each other, and then the other person would determine the number of laps the person walked. So 0.45 kilometers would be 9 laps, because each lap was 0.05 of a kilometer. And then they compared that data to the laps posted in our spreadsheet, and then computed the total count IOA. So for this example, it would be 9 laps divided by 9 laps, since I too recorded 9 laps in my data spreadsheet, and multiplied that by 100 to get 100% for that IOA. Now Jeremy is going to go on and explain the rest of our results.
4 out of 5 of our participants saw significant increases in the amount they walked between baseline and implementation of the token economy. The results show that implementation of a token economy can help motivate individuals to increase their amount of physical activity. The following slides will break down results by participant. Okay, participant 1. This was Stacy, and during baseline, the first baseline, she walked 0 laps for all 5 days. So her average was 0 segments walked, as well as she had a range of 0 segments. During the token economy, the first intervention phase, she averaged 2.6 segments walked and had a range of 0 to 4 segments walked. During the next baseline, she again walked 0 laps each of the 5 days, giving her a range and an average of 0 for both of those. And then during the second intervention, the second token economy phase, she averaged 4.6 segments walked and had a range of 3 to 5 segments walked. Participant 2 was Andrea. During the first baseline, she had an average and a range of 0 segments walked. During the implementation of the token economy, she averaged 6.2 segments walked and had a range of 3 to 9 segments walked. During the second baseline phase, she again averaged 0 laps walked per day and had a range of 0 segments walked. And during the implementation of the token economy the second time, she averaged 6.8 segments walked and had a range of 5 to 9 segments walked. Participant 3 was Kyla. During the first baseline phase, she had an average of 0.2 segments walked and had a range of 0 to 1 segments walked. During the first token economy phase, she averaged 3 segments walked per day and had a range of 0 to 4 segments walked. During the second baseline, she averaged 1 segment walked and had a range of 0 to 5 segments walked. And during the second intervention phase, she averaged 3.4 segments walked per day and had a range of 3 to 4 segments walked. Okay, participant 4 was Kaylin. During the first baseline, she averaged 0 segments walked and had a range of 0 segments walked. After that, she also had a back injury. So she had 4 more consecutive days of 0 segments walked. So during the first token economy phase, she averaged 3.5 segments walked and had a range of 0 to 6 segments walked. And then her second baseline, she also averaged 0 segments walked and had a range of 0. Okay, Jeremy was the 5th participant, and during baseline, I averaged 0 segments walked and had a range of 0 segments walked. During the first token economy phase, I averaged 1.8 segments walked and had a range of 0 to 3 segments walked. During the second baseline, I averaged 2.4 segments walked and had a range of 0 to 3 segments walked. And during the second intervention phase, I averaged 4.6 segments walked per day and had a range of 3 to 5 segments walked. Now, Kaylin is going to go over our conclusions and limitations.
So for our conclusions, this study replication concluded that token economies are an effective method of increasing exercise behavior in healthy adults without physical or intellectual disabilities. Furthermore, token economies are effective in populations both with and without intellectual disabilities to increase exercise behavior. Our final conclusion is that more research on the use of token economies to increase exercise and behavior in adults without disabilities is merited, particularly studies or replications that are more technologically sound and address the following limitations. The first limitation of our study is a bias in that the participants were aware of the purpose and hypotheses of the study that was being replicated. They were aware of how long phases were supposed to last and general trends within the previous study, which may have altered their performance. Additionally, participants were aware of one another's results as well as their own results, which may have altered their motivation to participate in exercise behavior. For fidelity, participants reported their own fidelity. For methods, participants asked themselves if they wanted to walk rather than being asked by another in the previous study. And finally, participants conducted the study via distance education, which means that the walking behavior occurred in different settings. So there was no way to control for confounding variables such as hilly or flat terrain, neighborhood safety, weather, time of day, etc. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please post them to the discussion board. We look forward to speaking with you.